So,
Hello.
good evening, everybody. This is the final event for the ASCM Indiana State chapter. And with all the hullabaloo we have been through this semester, given the coronavirus pandemic and the changes in approaches to teaching and everything, I think instead of taking a step back, we have really taken a couple of steps forward. And we have had some incredible meets throughout the semester. And this is by far the icing on the cake that we have been waiting for. And so we have a wide array of people in the audience. We have the administrative staff from the university, President Curtis, Provost Lickery, faculty from the supply chain program, faculty from the College of Business Leadership. Um, and so um, along with that, we have our students from the supply chain program, and these students range from freshmen, sophomores to juniors and seniors, as well as quite a few of our alumni who have come back and taken time out of their busy schedules. And so welcome to all of you. And for some of you that are not necessarily part of the supply chain program, I wanted to provide a little baseline, if you will. So bear with me for the next 2 to 3 minutes, and I shall hopefully provide the basis for this meeting and why this is such an important time to have this discussion. So as you know, the shortage of skilled workers, continues to remain a challenge in the United States manufacturing marketplace. When you look at the amalgamation of Industry 4.0, be it in terms of artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, IoT, cybersecurity, that problem has been elevated manyfold. So as an example, a 2018 gap study released by Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute in the US alone estimates 2 million jobs that need to be filled in this sector over the next decade. 6 out of 10 positions are currently unfilled. And women constitute one of US manufacturing's largest pool of untapped talent. And that pool comprises roughly only about 30% of the manufacturing supply chain workforce. I'll tag along my own personal experience, which is no different from these statistics. I learned the tricks of the trade in global sourcing many years back, working with, at that point of time, the new Chinese market that we were still unraveling here in the US. And I was under the tutelage of 2 women in purchasing and strategic sourcing, whose teachings continue to get paid forward in my classes. One of them, I fondly remember, was an African American lady, an authority in forged goods commodity. Whatever I know about the forging commodity today and what I percolate back to my students is based off of what I learned from her. And as an African American lady and a commodity manager, she used to describe her presence jokingly in the supply chain industry as a double whammy. Our supply chain program has also steadily seen more women than men graduating over the past decade, that at least I have been associated with this program. And I have no hesitation in acknowledging that my girls have been more diligent, savvier, more driven, and in general, more successful than my boys. I'm sorry, but I'm just saying the truth here. That said, the world of manufacturing supply chain continues to be a testing ground for women. Yes, today is better than yesterday, but challenges remain. So tonight's event is a humble endeavor to shed light on these challenges, hear from our panelists in the roundtable on the challenges they faced and how they overcame or continue to overcome those challenges. Tonight is an opportunity to draw inspiration from these Sycamore alums. And my hope to all the men out there, and let me quote President Obama, as he famously said in his reception of the US women's soccer team after their winning the 2015 World Cup. And he said, quote, "You have not only inspired millions of girls around the world to dream bigger, you have also inspired millions of boys to look at girls differently, which is just as much important," unquote. Without further ado, let me have our illustrious panelists introduce themselves, and we'll start with Marcia.
Good evening, everyone. And all right, kudos to all of you for taking time to be on this call at 5 p.m. tonight. Okay, so you're already doing something awesome by investing the time to do this. So thanks for being here. ISU alum from 1989, just a little while ago. How time flies. A proud Sycamore alum of the business school with a degree in accounting. I began my career at what was George S. Olive and is now BKD, a regional accounting firm, where I spent 5 years and became a CPA and worked in the field of auditing and audited manufacturers, not-for-profits, financial institutions, all across the board. But I fell in love with one of my audit clients, which was the Indianapolis Airport Authority, and have been there. I left public accounting and went to the airport 26 years ago. Have worked my way up through the finance side of the organization and became the CFO. And then ultimately, about 7 years ago, moved over to the top commercial role at the airport, where I oversee everything revenue generating for the airport authority and the attraction of new airlines and new nonstop flights. Work very closely with FedEx, one of our key business partners. We are the second largest FedEx hub in the world in Indianapolis, and a huge part of the supply chain industry and process is everything that FedEx, and the reason many businesses locate in this area is because of FedEx. And then customer experience and passenger experience is part of what I do. And I'm very active in the community and very proud and honored to be here to talk with each of you tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marsha. Let's hear from Ashley Borhart.
Hi, everyone. Ashley Bohart. I graduated in 2016. I see a couple of my former classmates on this call, so 2016 must have been a pretty good year. Right now, I am working at Rev Group. Rev Group is a company that does commercial vehicles and specialty emergency vehicles. So we sell RVs, but we also sell ambulances, buses, and fire trucks. Unfortunately, my last day with the company will be on November 30th because they have dissolved the division. But that being said, my role with the company currently has been in their data analytics space. So bringing in 29 different brands that are located across 17 different locations in the US. My job is to let them know what our sales are, what our opportunities are in the supply area, what we can do with some of our costing issues, our warehousing space. So it was kind of analytics in all areas of the business except the financial space. That was the one area that I did not go into. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you tonight, and I can't wait to keep going.
So Ashley, just to follow up on what you just said, that means you're in the job market?
I am in the job market.
Any plans of coming to the Indy area?
Plans to come back to the Indy area are high on the top of our list here.
Fantastic. That's a different discussion, but everybody got the message, I guess. Let's hear from Nicole.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for letting me be a part of the conversation this evening. I am a 2001 graduate from the technology education program that later transformed in technology and engineering education. I taught for 12 years as an engineering and technology high school teacher in Columbus, Indiana, and then transitioned to an administrative role, and then a CTE director at Central 9 Career Center in Greenwood, just south of Indianapolis. And I was just finishing up my educational specialist degree, so I just finished that in August of 2019 and was in the mode of working on my PhD. I didn't want to be a superintendent, but was working toward understanding all of the different superintendent roles that I served in my director role. And then I was approached by a manufacturer that was also one of our really strong partners. That manufacturer is Endress & Hauser, and that's a name you may or may not have heard before, but we manufacture process instrumentation. So we're helping other manufacturers automate their processes and measuring things like flow, level, pressure in food and beverage, pharmaceutical, oil and gas. So lots of really important industries, especially right now, we're seen as essential. So that's really important. But the role they wanted me to work in was workforce development. So my role now is to connect education and industry. So I'm bringing that education perspective into the industry side, and I get to connect with students like all of you, as well as connecting to universities and students across the country, because I'm helping take the really cool things that the company is doing here in Indiana and spread those to our representative partners across the country. So I'm excited to be here this evening and excited to share all of that passion and excitement with you guys as well.
Thanks so much, Nicole, and glad to have you back into our community. Just to let you know, in a couple of days' time, we have our center's advisory board meeting, and Kurt Turner is going to be a new advisory board member of our center. So that's a good addition for us into the
Excellent.
Andres Hauser family. Let's hear from Neely Stow. Oh, not Stow anymore. I'm sorry, Neely Sang. I'm going to get crucified for this later.
So hi everyone, I'm Neely Sang. Yeah, my name is wrong up there. I'll get that changed. I graduated from the OSCM program in 2016, and I am currently a commodity manager. I work at a cabinet manufacturing company, and I would say day to day, I'm ensuring that product arrives on time, to spec, and with the best total value proposition. A lot of time lately, I'm spending firefighting. But strategically, I am looking at our overall supply landscape. I'm constantly refreshing the supply base and developing future state plans. So I'm actually over plywood for the company. And I just like to say, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and chat tonight for this very important topic.
Fantastic. Thanks, Neely. Thanks for coming on board again. Cheryl.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Hi, Cheryl Robertson here. I work for Rolls-Royce today, but I graduated from Indiana State in 1990 from what is now the Scott College of Business with a business management degree. So again, I'm at Rolls-Royce. I see a couple of my colleagues on the line here. So hello. And so Rolls-Royce is a global company providing power that matters is our slogan. Anyway, I work in the defense side of the house, and so gas turbine engines powering lots of different military aircraft and some civilian aircraft. Currently, I've just been in this role for about 7 months. I am the program director over helicopter engine programs at Rolls-Royce. So that's just been quite a change for me. It's a completely different supply chain challenges. So Kyle Barble, that's on the call, he works with me in managing the supply chain. So I've been at Rolls-Royce for the majority of my career. Took a couple of years off to go work elsewhere and start a family. But really, other than that, I've been at Rolls-Royce for the better part of 22 years.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for taking time out of your schedule.
Mhm.
And finally, Kelsey.
Hello. I am also a 2016 graduate of the Operations Supply Chain Program. So I currently work for Toyota Material Handling, and we're #1 in the forklift manufacturing industry. I started in our logistics department for about 2 years, and then I transferred over to our supply chain department, where I've been a procurement analyst. And that includes anything from sourcing new projects to existing supplier development. So I'm really excited to be on this call today.
Fantastic, Kelsey. Thank you so much. Thank you to all 6 of you for taking time out of your schedules. So the first question is a very overarching, broad umbrella kind of a question. What challenges have you faced or continue to face in your respective careers as women? And anybody can start that process. I have heard from many of you individually on this, but I wanted to have this forum to have that discussion and a little bit of probably nodding from the others as to, yeah, I hear you, kind of a deal. And I know for a fact that I had this discussion with Cheryl not so long back, good old days before pandemic. So maybe you'll start the process, Cheryl, and the others will follow along.
Yeah, sure. No problem. So I work in the aerospace industry, and again, like I've been there most of my career And so if I look back, the workforce that comprised the aerospace industry 20 plus years ago was quite different than what it looks like today. I was very frequently the only female in the room, especially as I moved up through the organization. I would be, even in my early management roles, I would be frequently the only woman in the room, and I was actually the senior individual in the room. And actually had a couple of times where a customer asked me to go get coffee for him, not clearly understanding what my role was in that space. But when I look back, I frequently would say, I don't know that being a woman in the aerospace industry really presented me with a lot of challenges. And I think that was just more about confidence in who I am, who I was, and what I was there to do. So it was more about being just quite honestly being good about what I do. If I think of anything that did present me with challenges, was more about not being an engineer in this industry than being a female. Again, there were days when it was uncomfortable. And when we think about, we talked today a lot about diversity and inclusion. I was obviously the diverse person, the diverse individual in the room, but was frequently not included. Like, I frequently felt excluded. Like, I couldn't talk the talk. I wasn't like huge into following the sports teams and stuff, and so I felt excluded a lot from the conversation, and I really just had to have the confidence, right, to insert myself, and overcome that uncomfortableness, if you will, to make sure that I had a seat at the table and my voice was heard, and that I was forming the relationships, with my colleagues and my customers and my peers, despite the fact that I was one of the only females. Now, what I'll say, the good news for you is the workforce has changed quite substantially, especially in where I work in the aerospace industry. And it's not unusual now for me to not have a man in the room, right? There's lots of times when there'll be very senior conversations. I'll look around even the virtual room today, where we're doing Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and there won't be a man on the call. So it has changed. I guess I would just leave you with, you just have to have the confidence in your ability
Fantastic.
to overcome any insecurities about, maybe being excluded.
Sure. Marsha, your reflections?
Well, I think Cheryl and I are from similar generations, and when we graduated from Indiana State, and also me being in aviation, had a similar experience to Cheryl in, primarily a male-dominated field when I joined, and to some extent, it still is. And I think that the points that Cheryl made about having that confidence to stand up and to be a part of the conversation, because I found the same issue as I wasn't always included. There was the good old boy network. It was real. We really truly experienced it. And so, I felt like I probably worked harder and wanted to prove myself more, and felt a need to do that just because of the situation, because of being the minority, in the room around me. So I think the key kind of from a challenge, I think we probably turned it into an opportunity in terms of demonstrating that we could do the job, and often do the job better than those around us, because we worked hard, and we were smart about the way that we built relationships and followed through. And as an accountant, I didn't let the details get past me. So I often found that my peers might have a surface level answer, and I had done the work that could substantiate all of the detail. So their responses could last about 30 seconds, and I could dig in where I needed to sort of prove a point. And so I encourage each of you to take that, to do the work, invest the time, know the detail behind whatever the issue may be, in a way that you can demonstrate excellence, and you can demonstrate that you know what you're talking about, and have that confidence to do so without arrogance. I always encourage you to remain humble and to remain genuine, but know your stuff and be willing to speak up about it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marcia. Nicole?
Yeah, absolutely. I will share that I feel like I have been very blessed and fortunate with the roles that I've been in education. I did have several women that helped, bring me up into the organization, share with me leadership opportunities. I did find it interesting, and not so much a challenge for me personally, but I did see where, it did seem like men did seem to travel the career ladder much faster and were offered positions more quickly, maybe, than women in similar backgrounds and setups. But I didn't personally experience that, but had the opportunity to learn from some very strong women in my coming through the ranks. And then especially being a woman teacher in a male-dominated engineering and technology role. I know, at least going through coursework at Indiana State, it was tough sometimes, because the guys would be like, "Oh, do you need help? Well, why are you offering me help? You're not offering help to maybe the next person that's working on the same sort of project down to the end." And there are times when I definitely had to swallow pride and say, yeah, I actually do need help, and need to know when to recognize when to accept that. But it was also, I am competent, I can accomplish this. It's not me using a saw isn't something that I'm afraid of or that I can't do. So those pieces were definitely impactful. But again, I feel like I've been very fortunate in my roles. Nothing that stands out in my mind that's, oh wow, that was something that really impacted me and my journey in leadership. And on the industry side, since I've been with this organization the last, since July of 2019, all I can say is they are doing the right things to create diversity in the organization, both with females and all the different organizational diversity that we can encompass. We've been encouraging and creating that in our youthful folks coming into like our rotational programs and things. So it's been very fulfilling to see that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nicole. One thing I want to quickly point out is that as Cheryl and Marcia talked about the last couple of decades in the industry and how those challenges have shifted, there might be a thought that those challenges have completely ceased to exist in the recent world, which is why I bank on the other three panelists who are recent graduates of the program, only about 4 years in the industry. Do those challenges exist? And how do you encounter them as women? So whoever. Neely, you want to go first?
Yeah, so, and I think different industries maybe are in different points of their progression with inclusion. So right now, I'm not necessarily speaking to cabinets, but I'm in the wood industry, right? I buy plywood. So it is a male dominated industry still today. So I do, the challenges are, they still happen. I think a lot of the stuff that everyone else has said about speaking up and is all very good. I did have some examples that I would like to bring up if everyone wants to hear it. So, not being taken seriously is a form of gender bias. So, I've been on calls before, just being straightforward, where I provided a solution and it was completely overlooked. A man suggested the same exact solution, and it was, wow, that's great. Yeah, we're all on board with that. And it was just an eye-opening moment. But I want to counter that with always my solution. So just make sure, in those scenarios, you never let your emotion overcome your logic. So when that happens, obviously, immediately I'm mad, right? Like I'm like spitting fire mad. Like I can't believe that just happened. But you just have to stay very steady. That way you can critically think in this situation, stay calm, but always speak up on your behalf. So just make sure it's in a professional manner. And then being talked over is one I get a lot. I've had that happen. So I'll be mid sentence and somebody's jumping in. I'm not able to complete my thought. In this case, one thing that's really helped me is developing allies. So I surrounded myself with a group of people that I really trusted and that have my back. And in this case, you know, all I had to do was say, do you notice this? Are you seeing this like I am? And, you know, from that meeting point on, those people were standing up for me. Those people were saying, hey, let her finish her thought, or Neely, what did you have to say? And, you know, when I was talking to my boss, going over my notes for this event, you know, he said, make sure to include that you don't get sidetracked. Go back to your point, finish your thought, like make sure you complete that. And then, you know, the last one that I've experienced, and I think it's incredibly important to talk about, so I want to get it in there, is harassment. It can happen in all different forms. So I've experienced it. I'm working with a lot of outside people, okay, that don't have the same company policies and principles that the company that I work for does. So, you know, I've experienced inappropriate questions that have absolutely nothing to do with work. And, you know, I'll just say each situation is different. So you have to do what you think is right in that situation for your safety. But I would just encourage everyone, like, don't let it go. Speak up, even if you question, like, I don't know, was it me? Like, did I say something? Just speak up, go tell your boss if you don't feel comfortable telling your boss. I know my company has a anonymous hotline that you can call. So it's incredibly important. I think that's what's resonating amongst everyone that's talked so far, is speak up. Either include yourself and speak up, or speak up on your behalf. Just make sure you're doing that.
Fantastic examples, Neely. Thank you for your honesty in sharing all of these. Kelsey.
Sure. So I think a couple of things that people have talked about, like the gaining credibility by having confidence in what you're saying, even more so than you would expect that a man would have to prove their credibility as well. But I think for a woman, you have to do it even more so. You have to know the ins and outs completely versus maybe just making something up on the fly. A lot of things too, like at Toyota, it's really valued that you spend time on the shop floor. And I would say for every time a man goes on the shop floor, a woman needs to go 2 or 3 times to prove that I'm not scared to go on the floor. Like, I can go pick up parts too. It's not a big deal. And then another thing I think that is kind of shocking is in our buyer group, we have 11 buyers and one of them is a male. But we have 4 leaders and one of them is a female. So I think that's pretty important to note that even though we have almost a full female buyer team, we have 3 male leaders and 1 female leader. And I don't think that's really uncommon these days. It's getting better, but I don't think it's uncommon to see. So that's it.
Thanks, Kelsey. Ashley.
Yeah, I think that all the examples and everything that everybody has brought up is right on the nail. The challenges that we're facing now are far more subtle than overt in their sexism, or nobody will come right out and say something that they know would be considered rude, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening in their heads and displaying itself in other ways. In my position, a lot of what I do is kind of at the crossroads between sales, supply chain, and the IT department. So in IT departments are also not always the easiest people to work with, just in general. So there would always be a lot of, especially at the beginning, people really talking down to me, like, you have no possibility of understanding what we're telling you. And so they would just not make things up, but try to push all of the problems aside. So yeah, being an IT expert at that point, or at least an expert in the system, helped me combat some of that pushback that I would get from that team. The other thing that I've experienced so far in my career, I've had 4 different roles in 4 years with this company. Every role that I have worked in, I have worked for a woman, which I think is just extremely unusual in the field that I'm in, that I would have 4 different bosses, all 4 of them being female. But as soon as you go outside of the division that I have worked in, you're at maybe 5% leadership is female. And one of the things that we've really experienced there, even with myself, my current boss, once we start trying to work with the other women leaders in the company, we are immediately shut down, because in their office, in their location, they are the person, and there is no room for anybody else. So one of the things that we've really worked on very strongly in my division is making sure that we are finding those women leaders early on, and we are building them up. And I think that the challenge is going to be making sure you find somebody like the leaders that I've come across who are willing to take you on that journey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your insights from all of you. We move on to the next subtopic of this discussion. And this is germane to the manufacturing supply chain world, which has traditionally been such a male-driven world from an industrial standpoint. And so there are these essential silos that people have to operate within. There can be misconceptions, there can be misinformation. Oh, this job is not for women, that's not safe enough, not lucrative enough, and so on and so forth. So the question to all of you is, what are some of those silos within which you are operating, and what is the reality? Nicole, we'll start with you.
Sure. One of the pieces that I thought about and misconceptions that I will hear often is women will be expected to have a work-life balance. And I don't see that being asked of men in the organization. And in reality, none of us have a difference between work and life. I mean, those 2 worlds cross paths all the time. I don't stop thinking about my kids when I'm at work, and I don't stop thinking about work when I'm at home. Now, I definitely try to compartmentalize, but I really want to focus when I'm at home with my kids and my family, and I want to really focus on work while I'm here. But I think in reality, we have to realize that it's not just a female thing to have to take care of family and kids, that men have those same hurdles and things that they're trying to overcome in their work world, but they just don't get asked, they don't get those questions. And so for me, that was a big misconception. And I think one of the pieces that I really appreciated coming on board here was that you're a whole person, and we're going to care for you whether you're at work or you're at home. And we know that there will be times when you have to answer to one or the other when you're in either location.
Fantastic. Marcia?
I think just sort of building on what Nicole said is if you have a personal goal to have a family and to have a career, don't think that it isn't possible. I mean, you can see tons of us out there that have set that example in an ability to manage a high profile role and to have a loving family, healthy family relationship. But think about the company and the values of the company that you're working for and the expectations. And when you are interviewing for roles, don't be afraid to push back and interview the folks that are interviewing you to understand better what the culture of those organizations are. Because if it is a goal of yours to have a family and balance, it's totally achievable, but make sure that the folks that you're going to be working for can respect and value that decision, and that they will have an open mind to you being able to do both. And I think know yourself and what's important to you. Determine what your personal priorities are, and don't be afraid to ask questions when you think about a company or a role within that company, and that it will be able to meet what you're looking for as well.
Fantastic. Neely?
Yeah, so one of the misconceptions that I came up with, and it's related to my industry, is this was on a vendor T-shirt that they were giving away at a trade show, and it says something like to the effect of "Sawdust is just man glitter." And so, of course, I went up and got a shirt, and I was like, you know, but um, but you know, Dr. B asked me for the reality, and the reality is in the wood industry, I would say it is lagging behind. I think that there is more men in the industry than women, but I do think there are strong female leaders that are entering the industry. And I think the most important thing, and truly, I've really had this by example, is women support one another, and they continue to foster the growth of other women within the industry. So I've got, a mentor, anytime, there's another female interaction or something like that. It's just about supporting one another and lifting each other up to make sure that, we're making strides in the industry.
Fantastic. Cheryl?
So I was trying to think of something that wasn't redundant to what the other four just said. But I mean, one thing that I will say is, if you're looking at manufacturing and supply chain and, aerospace in my case, I truly think that there isn't, while there may be more men in the field than women, I would not call it a male-dominated world. There's really, I think the only profession I can think of that would prohibit a female into going into is maybe like the National Football League, right? So, I mean, you have come out of Indiana State's given you a great education, and you are skilled and you are talented, and you can be successful in whatever field you go into. So I would put aside that misconception that women aren't welcome here or there or wherever you're going. I think another misconception I would throw out there is, and I don't know how well this will resonate, but within Rolls-Royce, we have several employee resource groups. So, there's a women's network, there's a Black employee network, there's an Asian American network. So you get my drift, right? I think that in some circles, it is deemed to be kind of like weak to join one of those groups. Like maybe it's showing a weakness in you that you feel like you have to, affinitize with that group and join that group. But I would put that misconception aside as well. I think, groups like that are there for a purpose. And I think it was Neely that was just saying, people in those groups help lift you up and support you. And there will be times in your career when you'll need support from someone. You'll need a support network, whether it's to get you through a difficult time where you've been disparaged in a meeting, or someone's talked down to you or talked over you or asked you to go get coffee, or something like that. You'll need a network behind you that supports you and understands you. So don't, that would be my thing. Don't fear joining a group like that, because it does not make you look weak. It's just recognizing that it has value for you.
Fantastic. Well, as I orchestrated this challenge of thoughts, I purposefully left Kelsey and Ashley for the last part of this puzzle, primarily because I want them to piggyback and reflect on something Marcia discussed in the context of work-life balance. Now, Kelsey and Ashley are both minted moms. How old are your babies? Ashley, yours is?
She'll be 4 months next week.
4 months next week. And Kelsey?
She turned 4 months last week. So
Yeah.
Congratulations to both of you. How do
Thank you.
you manage this? How did you handle this in the context of your big change at the home front? And how is it perceived at the industry?
Sure. I'll go first, I guess. So, to back it up a little bit, at first when I joined Toyota, I didn't think to even ask them about a maternity policy or anything. I was like, I don't know, that's years away. But luckily, they let me have maternity leave for 12 weeks, which was fantastic. But with that, it came the fear that my leadership development and the career mapping that I had finally felt like I got traction on with my leadership, it made me very nervous that that was going to be put on hold and that I'd have to work through all of that again. But because Toyota, I feel like, has become very progressive over the last couple of years, I went back to work and picked up right where I left off. And I don't feel like I've missed a beat with my career development, which is probably, I'm very fortunate to say. Um, but I think that originally was a misconception and a big fear of mine that, well, maybe I need to wait to have a kid until I do this or that. But I think at this point, I went back to the company and it makes me even more loyal to them because they're supporting of my work-life balance. I do think sometimes there are a couple people who aren't quite as progressive about it at work, and maybe you'll get a side eye if you leave early for a doctor's appointment or something, but not nearly as bad as I would have thought. So it's been good.
Fantastic. Ashley?
Yeah, I know I mentioned before that I'm surrounded by female leaders, and so I think that made the transition a little bit easier. I think that if there was anybody who had any problems about it, they shut it down real quick. Like Kelsey, was able to take 12 weeks, but my company's not quite as progressive, so I only got paid for 6 of those. But I would say people know that families happen. Lots of people have families, so they're starting to plan and understand that this could happen at any point to any person. I wish, this is one area I wish we did the same for men. I wish you guys had the opportunity to take that time home with your families. The one time that I will say this pandemic was kind of nice for us is that my husband did get to stay home with us for at least those first 8 weeks. He was working, but he was home to help if I needed it for a minute. And now we found out over the weekend that our daycare is shut down because they have COVID exposure. So I am working full time from home with a almost 4-month-old. And still, my teammates have just been phenomenal and understanding and being willing to be flexible, because they know if they want me to be able to work, they have to be flexible. If you're inflexible, then you're going to get nothing, because the work-life balance, it's not a balance. My life and my family is going to always go way above anything that's going on at work. And I think that it's the same for a lot of people, whether or not they're willing to admit it and say it out loud. But when you have that support system and you have those people around you who are willing to step in and say, I know that you're going to have to be away to put her down for a nap for 10 minutes. We'll handle this call that somebody said they would be reaching out to you about. But yeah, it has gone better than I expected. The one other interesting thing was 2 weeks before I went out, I found out that my job was going away at the end of the year. So that also presented some interesting challenges. But again, my teammates and the people that are around me have been phenomenal throughout the entire process.
Fantastic. And this is such an intriguing topic that we can go on and on about it. We only have so much time. I'll go to my final piece of the puzzle here. 2 pieces of advice for young women entering the workforce within manufacturing supply chain that you would want to provide to this audience. And we'll start with Cheryl.
I think first and foremost, I would say find a mentor. And that mentor does not have to be a female. It just needs to be somebody that you can connect with, and someone whose career you might like to emulate. But definitely, first and foremost, find a mentor. The second piece of advice I give you is especially as you're entering into the workforce, look for job opportunities that maybe they're not what you want to do for a long, the long term, but look for job opportunities that may not give you a promotion, but that you'll just learn the most from. Because those kinds of experiences, if you take the same kind of job over and over and just kind of move into different roles that you're learning the same thing, you're not building that breadth. So you'll be limited in terms of how far you can go. So look for job opportunities that give you a learning opportunity.
Thank you so much. Marsha.
Build networks and foster those relationships. When you meet people, make sure that you're following through with your LinkedIn connection, with then sending messages to them. Get to know people on a more personal level and build a strong relationship, not just an acquaintance. That will take you so far. And whether that's jotting down in your calendar, oh, I heard him say his birthday is on, January 2nd. Then you can send a little message, happy birthday. It's amazing how many people have done that. But build real, true relationships. And then my second piece of advice is do what you say you're going to do and follow through. The worst thing that you could ever do is raise your hand and say you're going to do something and then not follow through in a thorough and complete way.
Fantastic. Nicole?
Yep, my two pieces of advice are very closely along the same lines of Cheryl. One, find a mentor, as she stated, but if you have the opportunity to be a mentor for somebody else who is coming up in the ranks, they are likely not going to come to you and say, will you be my mentor? Seek them out and let them know that you're there as a support function for that individual. And it will be very rewarding for both you and that mentee. And then secondly, be open to new opportunities that are presented to you, new projects that may not even be within your team or your function, but be open to serving in those roles. That's where you're going to see that cross-functional value come across. Other members of your team are going to get to know you that are not directly in your team, but then you're also going to get to learn more about the organization. And those new opportunities will take you in paths that you would not have envisioned yourself being on. I never envisioned myself being in a manufacturing environment. I wouldn't have been here if it hadn't been for a conversation, a network, a relationship that had been built with this industry partner when I was in the education realm. So that's my
Fantastic.
2 cents.
Thank you so much. Ashley?
My first piece of advice, and this would be the same for anybody, is track your results. I think a lot of people have a really difficult time bragging about themselves or talking about the things they've done really, really well. But if throughout the year you're tracking your results, your projects, what you've accomplished, when you get to that year-end review, you've got a Word document, a notebook, whatever, full of things that you can reach out to. Otherwise, and having done a few year-end reviews for my own employees, everybody tends to pick the projects they did in the last 2 months, but they're forgetting what they did for the 10 months prior because they didn't write it down and they didn't remember. So track your results, and we've talked about mentorship, but yes, you find a mentor and then make sure that as you're moving along, leave the door open for those behind you.
Fantastic. Kelsey?
So I think everybody's kind of saying the same thing that I'm going to say here, but don't shy away from mentioning your accomplishments. Kind of like Ashley just talked about, you have to be an advocate and a salesperson for yourself a lot of times. And I think a lot of people, and maybe women especially, feel that maybe you're bragging versus talking about things that you've actually achieved and that you deserve the credit for. And then another thing, we always have like a 7:30 meeting, which we call it our war room. And when I walk in that room, I'm one of like 3 women in it with 30 men. So I always tell myself, don't doubt that you deserve to be in there, that you've earned the right to be able to talk in that room, even though it's amongst all of these other leaders who might be male. And there are some females, but I just say, don't doubt yourself. That's it.
Very nice. And last but not the least, Neely.
Yeah, so I'll just add, communication is key. So don't be afraid to talk. Don't be able to say what you want. I feel like the only way you can get what you want is if you communicate it. And it really makes your job and everyone else's a lot better.
Fantastic. Before I open this forum up for a Q&A from the audience, I would be an absolute hypocrite if I don't mention this in the context of this meeting. We oftentimes hear about, for any gender, when that specific gender is overlooked within a certain industry, it's about trying to break that glass ceiling, right? And we have somebody in the audience here who has truly broken that glass ceiling many times over. Um, this person is the first female to lead Indiana State University in its long run. And please join me in welcoming Dr. Deborah Curtis, the 12th president of Indiana State University. And Dr. Curtis, if you can please say a few words to the audience in this specific sense.
Well, thank you, Dr. B. Thank you for doing this, because I am listening to this set of brilliant women who are finding their way on a path that I had thought probably was a lot smoother by now than it is. And so to remember over and over again, it's different. I keep saying women tend to lead differently than men. One's not better than the other. They just tend to bring differences to the process. And I so appreciate each of you not only talking about your journey, but the advice about making sure that you have that confidence to put yourself into place and say, yeah, I can do that. I remember recently speaking with some women in our women's studies program, and a female graduate student said to me, it just seems like women have to work twice as hard. And my comment was, then work twice as hard. It's not a secret, right? It's not a secret. Then work twice as hard. You know the path. And just to be able to lift up some of these comments for young women to be aware of it, that there is a path. It's not like there isn't one. And I kind of resist the break the glass ceiling thing, because there's so many women who went before me in these roles. It's a first for Indiana State. I am by no means the first woman to be a president of a university. And set your view high and broad, so you see, maybe not in your company, maybe not exactly in your profession, but others who have done this work in different ways, and learn from that. And I want to reiterate one thing that I believe it was Marcia who might have said it, but I might be wrong on this. And I'm thrilled to have actually had time to sit with Marcia since I've been here. So that's been a real treat. Is your mentors are not always other women either. There are many, many men that will be on your career path who are not only happy to, but see talent in you and are willing to help you. I call it light that path or light that runway for you. So make sure you think about the person's style and skills you would love to learn and be a part of, whatever their gender may be, because there are opportunities there like there have never been before. And for the gentlemen on this call who are students, thank you. Thank you for being a part of this and listening to the experiences of women who are charting this path as well. My very closest colleague, as a matter of fact, is sitting on this call with us, Provost Lakari, and we regularly have the opportunity to reflect on these issues and topics. And I can't tell you how much I value that interaction in everyday kind of activities. So for these women, brilliant women who have, and I want you to know, we will forever be so proud that you are sycamores, and we will be lifting each of you up. And you young women who have yet to graduate, and you young men on this call who have yet to graduate, the same to you as well, because we know you are here taking this in like a sponge to be able to use it later in your career path. So it's there. Go out and get it. So thrilled to be a part of this. And Dr. B, thanks for inviting me to be here today.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And at this point of time, we have about 6-7 minutes. I want to open this up to the audience. Any question, whoever wants to go, I'm sure you'll have your thoughts, questions. And this is just not for our women, but also for the men. Michelle White.
Thanks, Dr. B. First, I want to thank the panelists for being on the call today. I really appreciated all of the experiences and insights you've been able to share and all the little golden nuggets of wisdom as well. The one question that I am thinking of and I'm interested
Michelle, real quick, can you introduce yourself in terms of what you do right now so that the rest of the
yeah.
audience also knows?
Sure. So I also graduated from the Operations and Supply Chain program in 2018, and I started my career at Rolls-Royce in Indianapolis. So I started in their graduate rotation program and then exited, and I am now a forecast planner for a few of the defense programs. So basically, I'm just planning material and how much material we need for repair and how much new material we need to support our engines in the aftermarket space. But I was interested to hear if any of the women on the call, any of the panelists feel that as a minority, do you have a responsibility to educate the majority on any biases? And if so, do you have any examples of some hard conversations that you've had to have? Yeah, I can give an example. And luckily the person in question was very open to the feedback that we gave them. Otherwise this conversation could have gone very differently. But one of the things, and this, it drives me crazy, constantly referred to as the girl in the data analytics. Who's your girl in data analytics? And I was going to call Dr. B out on it because people never say boys, but he did say boys. So I'll give him the pass because we were girls and boys instead of girls and men. But we did have a conversation with our sales director because I kept getting emails where he would write to the customer and say, let me send this to my girl in analytics. And so I had to come up and say, hey, John, I'm not your girl in analytics. I'm your colleague. Can you refer to me as your teammate or your colleague, or let me send this over to our analyst? And he right away, he's like, yes, absolutely. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean any offense. I will change that language going forward. And then, a few weeks later, I had another sales analyst who I work with frequently who said, hey, I heard that you had a conversation with John, and thank you so much for having that conversation, because I felt so uncomfortable about constantly being referred to as John's girl when that's not the relationship we have at all. So yeah, not a difficult conversation because he took it very well, but definitely leading up to that conversation, something I was nervous about bringing up because it could have gone very differently.
Well, I saved the day by keeping the girls and boys in place. Good. Other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Nick. Introduce yourself, where you are in the program.
Okay, my name is Nick Burton. I'm a senior operations and supply chain management major. So you guys had shared advice about like being as a woman, like being confident in the workplace and stuff. What advice do you have to men to kind of help to even like make a more welcome seat at the table and like be more of a champion for women in the workplace?
Good question.
Answer that. If you have the opportunity, you're in conversation and you feel like, I think it was Neely a moment ago that said, she would get skipped over, that conversation would go past her. Make a point to ask somebody that, and it doesn't have to be just females. A lot of times you may see people that are more introverted and they aren't going to outwardly bring that conversation out. Ask those members at the table, what are you thinking? Include them. And a lot of times they may just need more processing time, and that's why they haven't spoken up, or they don't feel like they want to interrupt others in the conversation. But be an advocate for those both female and introvert individuals and getting them included in the conversation.
Who's next?
Yeah, I have a question.
Rebecca.
I don't know if I came in a little late. My name is Becky Marquez. I'm a senior and I'm the operations supply chain management here at Indiana State University. I came a little late, so I might have missed it, but is there something in your company that has done for the public that, pushes for women's equality, even in the world outside of the workplace?
So I can speak to what Toyota's done. Like I said, they've become a lot more progressive even since the time I started there. But we actually internally have started a women's network, which has executive male leadership promoting it, and being the sponsors of it. So that's one thing that internally they really are pushing. They also offer 16 hours of community service, which a lot of times I'll see when they are promoting like events that you can go to for that community service will be things like something related to maybe Girls Inc., which is where you go and spend time with a girl and, you know, help her in whatever capacity that is, or they'll share other sponsor events that are related to things where maybe like high school students can come into Toyota and learn about the industry, male and female, and really trying to promote it as equality versus, oh, here's a male industry that you should be part of. So.
One last question we'll take from the audience. Dr. Shikora and I are both teaching tonight.
Yeah, I have a question, Dr. B.
Go ahead, Michaela.
My name is
Introduce
Michaela
yourself.
Irish. I'm a senior operations and supply chain management major. And I was wondering if any of you had faced a situation where you're doing the same job as a male and they are getting paid more than you, and how do you address that situation if that's happened to you?
I guess I can speak to this a bit because we had a whole restructuring of our salary since we used to be hourly plus overtime. No matter who it is, I would say don't ask anyone their salary. Don't compare yourself to it because it's going to steal your joy. If you start to know what other people are getting paid, because yes, there are a lot of studies that show men get paid more. I don't know if that's necessarily the case at Toyota or not. But there are so many factors that go into the decision for someone's salary that I've learned just don't even start comparing or asking. Unless you do feel that maybe it is an issue at your company where it's a gender thing and not an experience or related to something else other than gender.
And I would say go out and find the data because there's a lot, depending on your role, there's a lot of industry data that's available, and find it from multiple sources and build your case and be data driven when you're going forward to make a case.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to all of you for taking time out of your schedules. At this point of time, if everybody can unmute their microphones and have a quick round of applause for our panelists and for the president and the provost to take time out of your schedules. This is something that we have been waiting for a while throughout the semester, and I'm so happy that we are ending with the finest of notes, and hopefully we can take a lot out of this as we progress in our respective careers. So thank you so